McGowan here, the sales director for Interrel in the Southeast. Today we're going to talk about, it's one of the best attended sessions for our recent solutions conference. It was put on by Scott Wendell, Master Solutions Consultant. And of course, as it says, how EPM impacts the war for talent in retail, something that a lot of retailers are struggling with right now. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start the recording. And if you should have any questions or follow-ups, we can capture those at the end and be sure to follow up with you.
Lori, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. And just for the sake of full transparency, let me show you exactly where I am in this modern world. Welcome to Atlanta Hartsfield and the North Baggage Claim Terminal. So when we talk about how work is changing and the war for talent is a whole other ballgame these days. So hopefully, Scott, give me a thumbs up since I can see you. If you can hear me and see me, okay, great, thank you. So let's go ahead and get started. And what we want to do, I'll introduce myself and give you a little bit of my background. And hopefully the mask people won't come by and yell at me. I'll put my mask on. So we want to spend a little bit of time talking about what, from a business perspective, right? What is going on today in terms of talent, right? Every time we go somewhere, we see help wanted signs everywhere we go, right? And so I've been in some situations where I've seen signs at my local Wendy's, $1,000 signing bonus, right? Or, all these other new benefits that are coming, and, no one is more impacted than I would say some of our retail customers, right? So I currently, today, I'm a vice president of HCM transformation at Oracle. I come alongside our HR customers as they go through their digital transformation. Prior to joining Oracle, I led a global HCM implementation at L Brands. So Victoria's Secret, Bath & Body Works, Henry Bendel, La Senza, and then all the global sourcing and talent around the world. So let's go ahead to the next slide. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of what we're hearing today that's driving the issues as we talk about, talent and retail and where it's going and what's happening. And we all, because we're coming into the holiday season, let's see if I can get a little bit better here. Oh, look at that. Technology. As we come into the holiday season, how many people have seen, right, all the supply chain issues that are going on? And we know that this is going to impact, things that we're ordering, but you got to get that stuff off those ships and into the stores or into the distribution centers, right? And you have to figure out, or our customers are trying to figure out, do they even have the labor to move that? So, I'm sure that many people on this call have heard about the Great Resignation. I actually saw a statistic yesterday that 50%, so either Scott or myself, are thinking about getting a new job these days. And so when you think about what that means in the transition, I don't think we've ever seen labor changes like this since the Great Depression. So as back to the whole, retail space and how do we find that talent and the competitiveness around it, we've seen the increase in hourly wages. I talked to you a little bit around what does it look like from a signing bonus perspective. How, what are the other perks? There's an example here of McDonald's giving away new iPhones. And so the competitive nature of finding talent is at the top of the minds of the customers we deal with. The next piece that's really important is how do you retain your talent? And what do you know about them? And then Scott, a little bit later on, is also going to talk about how do you even think about and do strategic planning around your talent. So let's go to the next slide and talk a little bit around some of these trends. And, when I talk about trends and what's impacting the world today, just a couple of things, right? I always look to business sources. I look to industry, periodicals, and I also talk to our customers, right? And so I can't tell you how many times I was getting on the plane today and we were talking about, someone said, let's get back to normal. And, everyone kind of said, no, there's no next get back to normal. It's what's the next piece going to look like, right? And if you think about your own consumer habits and shopping and how you think about it, we all know that the last 19 months will change whether we go into a store, the brick and mortar landscape, and how we shop, whether that's for, apparel, food, whatever it is that we need to buy, lumber, those experiences have changed forever. And we've seen this widening, right? And we're going to continue to see it between retailers that are resilient and can maneuver quickly and the ones that don't have a strong back office, and retailers that don't have I would say, an ability to be robust in how they change in the world today. So when we look at the big guys, right, the Walmarts, the Amazons, the Targets, Costco, they're trying to capitalize on those 2020 gains because they saw huge increases. They were, if they were one of our larger customers is in the grocery space as a retailer, and they were hiring hundreds and hundreds of people every month, right? And they're growing, and they want to keep that, right? And those trends haven't changed. I think as consumers, we're trying to figure out how we want to shop in this new world, and the retailers are trying to figure out how to service us. There are some, I think, retailers that still are going to stick with curbside pickup and kind of reposition their staff to handle that depending on the needs of the consumers. And some will not, right? They want you to come back into the store. They want to fill your basket with other things that you usually grab on your way to the point of sale as you're checking out. But these organizations are having to make big decisions. We can count through all of this. I think the one piece that's not on here when this trend came out was what's the impact of vaccine mandates, and how are retailers thinking about that in the world? So from a data perspective, and when we think about human capital, some retailers have vaccine requirements and others do not. And so that becomes very different as they think about managing and thinking through their labor. We can go ahead and go to the next slide, Scott. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to post them in chat or raise your hand. Clearly, I'm super formal, so we'd love to have an interactive discussion here. One of the things to always think about from an analytics perspective and understanding your customer and their workforce is it's really important. I think, I always like to say not all retail is the same. It's not created equal. It's super different. And what kind of retailer is your organization or your customer that you're working with? And how do they define themselves? Are they publicly traded? Are they private equity owned? Are they founder owned? All of those are very different drivers as you begin to think about analytics and how to do planning and how to think about the human capital side of things. And most importantly, for any retailer, it's always about the business results. I encourage people all the time. We do it with all of our customers, is shop their stores, shop online, shop their store, go visit them, have a conversation with a store manager, have a conversation with an associate, and learn, right? Be curious about the problems they have and the problems they're trying to solve. Because as we look at ways to make great data-informed decisions about workforces, that also can get us to ask different and more robust questions that are business focused around our customers. It's just been a great approach for me that's always paid off. I find that the more I can equip myself with data to answer a question, the better it is that I'm not having an emotionally based discussion, and I can knock out some bias in some of the discussion, or maybe reset someone's experience as we think about, how do we make great business decisions moving forward, and upon what are we going to base that? And it's really, really important, especially now as we're struggling for labor and answering some of those questions. How many people am I hiring? How many people are ghosting me? How many people are actually showing up but leave we used to call them quick quits. How many people are leaving in the first 30 days? And so if you have a leader who's trying to get to the root cause of a problem, and they're all answering it based on, or they're thinking about solving a problem based on their own experiences, but don't actually have data to help inform them, they could go off in the wrong direction. And so I always, arm yourselves well, and I'm sure this group really does, with great information to help people make good business-oriented decisions. We can go to the next slide. And so one of the things that I always look at too, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these slides, but just to talk about what are the ways that retailers are, and you guys probably all know this or not, how are we thinking about our human capital? What are the sales per associate? What are the transactions per shopper that comes in? How is the impact of training? So we know, right? So when we think about the war on talent, we think about it's really hard to get people in the door. It's hard to retain them. Now I'm going to spend time training them. Is it paying off for me? Am I building this environment and this culture where people are well trained and they feel confident and they can stay? And what's the return on investment for that training? So we just wanted to provide a little bit of examples of store metrics to think about from the end user perspective that helps kind of measure success in this space. You can go to the next one. You know, we talked a little bit about the human capital side of things and the metrics and the war on talent. I think it's really important. So back to how do you make great data informed decisions, especially when you're talking about people, which can get really emotional, right? What's my turnover by store? Do I have a problem with a manager in a store? Do I see more turnover in one area but not in others? And can I look at sort of the hierarchies and that information to figure out, is it actually that person? The other piece here is when you think about what are my trends on sales per associate? Is it like my new hires are selling more because they're happy and they're excited and they have a great time and they love the brand and the product? And is that different than people who have a little bit more tenure? So trying to understand that can also be pretty insightful as we think about talent that we're cultivating in the environments that we want to create and what that looks like. This was item number 3 here is offers made, to people. Like if you're going to get a signing bonus, or you get a bonus because you came to work, organizations are looking at a lot of different things and you haven't ghosted me. What does that look like? And I have to be able to track and measure all that, as well as absenteeism. And, how does that, is it higher in some areas than another? A lot of organizations look at absenteeism today as a wellness metric. Even as they dig into a little bit more around sort of the psychology of the retail associate. Are they absent because, insert any number one of reasons here. And it's important to, if you have absenteeism issues, how do you get to the root cause of that? Is it a lack of childcare, a lack of transportation, a manager or a toxic culture where people just really don't want to come to work? So thinking through some of those human capital metrics is real important when we begin to try to figure out, how are we going to attract and retain talent? We can go to the next slide, Scott. Some other typical information I think that I would add to this, not just the COVID cases and the numbers. I compare that to other external pieces of data like COVID in the area or the geography where the store is. I also would add into this today, depending on the requirements of the organization and how they're approaching vaccine tracking. And what does that look like? And, is it different in a distribution center or through drivers or for actual retail store facing, customer facing associates, and try to understand what's coming behind that. So I think what we'll begin to see in the future is more tracking in that space as well, and safety always. I think the other thing too, I would link the employee feedback from a customer experience or from an associate experience. So we all know that the engaged customers are going to provide, better customer service. And so, drawing those comparisons and parallels between, or attempting to see if there's a correlation between engagement, absenteeism, customer satisfaction, and store sales is always a great way to pull data together and to begin to think about, from the perspective of the business, how is it going? And what data informed decisions can we make that then drive other business choices? We can go to the next slide, Scott. These are just general reports on, sales per square foot, things to think about from a business perspective, turnover. I think you could also add in here leakage, depending on the store or the retailer and how they're thinking about it. And if we go to the next slide. And I think this is super important, and this is going to lead into what Scott is going to talk about too. When we think about holiday hiring, every time I work with a retailer, it's always, it's really interesting. So most retailers, scale up big for holiday, and they have so many more that they need to hire just for that season. Some retailers actually have to scale up for back to school. And we know that in 2020, it looked really different, but in 2021, back to school became like, their hiring season starts before to prepare for that. With the seasons kind of expanding, right? Halloween taking on more, and stores having to, expand even further out their hiring season. It's getting more and more and more competitive, and trying to find these people and creating safe environments for them to work is critical to be able to service the customers. So, we just wanted to share a little bit around, what are organizations measuring? How are they thinking about talent? What does that look like? How are they bringing them in? And most importantly, how are they retaining them? I will say one little data snack that I've learned recently is when you think about organizations giving hiring bonuses, they are not as effective as a referral bonus. So if you in your organizations have an opportunity to influence that at all, if I get a referral bonus and someone gets hired, both people are likely to stay because now you have a buddy in the workplace. So just something to think about as we look to the holiday season and just how tough it's going to be out there. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them in chat, but I'm going to turn it over to Scott at this point.
Thank you very much, Lori. I really appreciate that. And, I kind of wanted to use this as a handoff slide because I think one of the, big opportunities that there is really leveraging tools that I have access to manage through this complexity, because as you can see, there's a lot of pressure to be able to attract talent into your organization. And there is a financial impact to that, right? We don't work with unlimited sources of funds. So if we do have initiatives and things in place to try and make our organizations more attractive to these workers that are in limited supply, we have to really understand what is the financial impact of that investment. Strategically, where do we make these investments? How can we best get the use out of our dollar to get the return of our money? How do we protect our pricing power in the market? How do we protect our margins in the market? And this really kind of leads into the real value of having a platform in place to provide you with this kind of connected planning experience. And if you look at what's really kind of driving out how I respond to the market, it's that ability to, really combine that strategic layer of planning that we're doing, kind of modeling out what the opportunities are, what are the scenarios that I'm going through as we enter this endemic period of COVID, and it becomes more of something that we live with every year. What are the strategic impacts of that? What are the strategic impacts of trying to develop a digital transformation in our organization, and how do I attract the IT talent when I'm competing against every other tech company that's using the same types of resources? How do I get people working in my stores? How do I get people working in my warehouses to get goods into my stores? These are all high-level initiatives that I need to be able to develop on the fly, really kind of react, as Dean pointed out to. We've never really had a stable period for a long period of time in retail. There's always been events. There's always been challenges in the industry. And having the tools in place to work through those, I think, are critical. And then being able to link it to our day-to-day operations. So when we talk about our driver-based planning, our driver-based forecasting capabilities to be able to roll out over, the next 2 to 3 selling seasons, how we're going to execute to these plans, I think is critical. And then finally, how can I take advantage of the data science out there to make better, smarter decisions, and also make more efficient decisions with the team that I do have in place? I've worked in retail my whole career. I've been in the finance side of the organization almost the entire 23 out of the 25 years. And there's one thing that is true is that, our finance teams are very, very lean. So we always have to do more with less. And I think I really need to kind of lean on those capabilities. So, what EPM brings to the table is really this capability of linking kind of what we're doing strategically with the execution side. So as I develop out these initiatives, it's critically important that I be able to show an ability to execute. So if I have a strategic initiative to invest more money into lifting up our pay scales at the stores, and how does that flow through my workforce models? If I want to invest in building out better digital capabilities, I'm going to need additional staff. I'm going to need additional skill sets that aren't available to me in my current workforce. These are all investments I'm making in the business. So being able to develop out, the strategic initiatives and linking that with execution becomes critically important within the business. And then also from a strategic perspective, being able to have lots of power in how to model out, run scenarios, being able to really kind of play out market conditions through my financial model. So as the next crisis comes, as the next opportunity presents itself, right, where we can gain market share because we're more nimble than our competition, these are opportunities that we can take advantage of in the tools that we have. And then also leaning on that science to be able to deliver exceptional capabilities to react to trends in the business. So understanding, what's happening and then being able to react to that at a moment's notice. So just real quickly, I just want to show you, a couple of examples of what this may look like. So if you look at, being able to come in to our planning environment, it's really that ability, whether I'm at the strategic level of my business or at a lower level of my business, really kind of, modeling out what's happening on a moment's notice, right? So if I have some assumptions at a high level of what's happening in my business, I can make some high level assumptions about where we're going to invest, right? And these are all, common, ideas about what's happening, right? Just day-to-day modeling of what's happening in my business. I can come in and immediately get visibility into what's happening on a day-to-day basis. Like, what is the full scenario impact of making some core business decisions? But it's also tying things in like what we're challenged with today, right? So we're going to get a Fed decision tomorrow on what we're going to do to combat inflation, right? So I'm in a very high inflation environment. And then hopefully we can retain or, crank this down. So, how does this, type of impact flow through my pricing models? How does it flow through, what I'm paying my employees, and how is this affecting my margins? But also, being able to model out, initiatives. So if we wanted to invest, right, in market pay gap initiatives, put more money into the business, right, use some of our cash, or we wanted to, do more with less. So maybe we have some productivity initiatives, or, investing in our digital consumer initiative, right, which is going to require us to make more investment in additional employees. These all have financial impacts to how we can model out our business. And I can continuously model out and see, from a cash flow perspective, from a net income perspective, how that flows through my business. And then being able to also, yes.
Yeah, no, I was going to say it could be that I'm on my phone, but I still see the demonstration slide. So not sure if you're actually demoing.
Oh,
and it could be me.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I'm in an airport doing apologies. So
yes. Thank you for telling me. So
yeah,
let me go back here. So
there we go.
Yeah. So now this makes more sense. So again, being able to change, your perspective on what you can see it's happening in your business, right? So if I, change an assumption around what's happening from a inflation rate perspective, and maybe move out another initiative that we want to invest in, being able to model that out and get, real-time visibility into what's happening in your business, and then tying that out to the target setting that we're, doing across our channels, right? So if I know that I've got some variable cost pressure in my business, I can model out those drivers, or let's say from a fixed cost perspective, or from a variable cost perspective, I can make changes into what's happening. And then even at the SG&A level, right? So information systems, we may only have spent 0.5% of our payroll in IT, but I know these costs are rising. Let's say this is going to go up to 2%, right? I can model out the impacts of what's happening in my business and have that flow through my models to easily be able to see the real-time impacts. and then have that connected to what's happening, right? So as I'm making investments in my hiring, how do I see that that's going to impact my traffic, or how is it going to impact the mix of what I'm going to be getting from a traffic perspective? So, and then, modeling that out as far as how it's going to impact my decisions around what I'm making at the pricing perspective, or where I think that we may have opportunities to maintain our margin. What particular categories are we stronger in, and where can we manage that? So flowing it through the product level of our margin, and then also being able to manage it through more of an expense perspective, being able to see from a full P&L perspective, all the drivers and things that we're driving out our models, and then having that ability to incorporate, very robust, modeling capabilities across our stores, right? So as we're coming in and lifting up our assumptions on, where do we think our variable rates are going to end up, right? We're not going to get away with being below $15 an hour, right? We're going to have a lot more, rate assumptions around what these variable rates are going to be and how it's going to impact my business. So as I'm planning out my sales and things of that nature, all of this can easily flow through so that I get visibility into what's happening, from a payroll perspective, and I can see, what markets are going to be more of an outlier for me, so that I can react to them. The other thing that I can do from a planning perspective is really then tie this back to other types of planning that I'm doing, whether it's around my strategic plan and tying that to my, my compensation planning. So being able to come in and easily, get an idea of, how my compensation is breaking down by different segments of my SG&A spend, being able to come in and look at some high level analysis of where my headcount trends are, and looking at how things break down, by associate. And if I have project oriented initiatives, right? So looking at that new digital website, or doing some marketing initiatives, being able to quickly and easily look at how my initiatives that I set at the strategic level are flowing through, and how we're executing them to them on a planning perspective. The other thing that I'd just like to highlight, what we can do today, is also really focusing on how science can also help us. So one of the new things that Oracle has brought to the table to really help us from the execution side is really taking us from the reactive world of, hey, I see there's a problem high level in my plan. Now let me go through the process and put on my data gatherer hat and go try and figure out that problem. I think Dean told some interesting stories from when he was in retail about spending so much time trying to isolate and find the problem. What Oracle has really done is put hands, into place, tools into place to really help us now proactively go out, look for signal detections, look for root cause analysis, provide insight and discovery into what's happening in your business to be able to react to what those changes are. One of the challenges is, as you go through kind of your typical data action process, it's, hey, let's load data into our system, let's analyze data. We'll review those results with the business, and then based on that review, we'll take action. Unfortunately, the analyze and review with the business process was not automated. It was extremely manual. It was very difficult to isolate what's happening, looking for variances, trends, anomalies, correlations, detecting patterns. if you kind of break this down from a retail perspective, let's say you have hundreds of stores, right? So I may come in and drill down into a region and not see that there's any challenges here, because the challenges in these two stores offset what's happening in my business. So it could be something that's important that I miss. But just being able to keep track of just a simple structure like this is, keeping track of over 100 million potential data coordinates. So, what we have now in the hands of our business users is something called EPM. And what this allows us to do is really just drill now into an environment where we can come in on a Monday morning, on a Tuesday morning, and the system's going to serve up to us what's happening in the business, right? So I can come in and proactively become aware of where all of my problems are, or things that need my attention. And I can come in and sort through these by type, right? So I can look for anomalies or forecast biases or predictions. I can look at things by the status of how important they are to me, or I can look at things by the percentage impact, right? So if I want just high impact variances, I can filter through those. But this is really kind of game changing, right? Because if I want to isolate on all of my variances that are over 50,000 or between 30 and 50,000, it would take me hours and hours to go through and try to look through the haystack and find that needle. Now the system moves the haystack for me and points me to that needle, right? So I can immediately get insight into that. And it's not just insight, but it's providing an actionable environment for you to do something about those anomalies that are happening in your business. So as I'm making these strategic decisions and I'm looking for, are there traffic impacts because we're short on labor? Are there wage variance scenarios that I need to address, right? Are we suffering from customer satisfaction? Are we out of stock because we're seeing issues in our supply chain, right? These are things that are very hard for the analysts to go find themselves. Now we're providing a way of making it actionable, right? Whether I do it on an ad hoc basis to go and update a forecast or update a trend, being able to quickly diagnose something, action upon it, make that change in the system. I have that kind of capability and tool at my disposal. Or if I just want to come in to the system, again, look at a potential anomaly that's happening in the system and make it more of a real-time kind of update or forecast, right? Without really having to leave what's happening. I can find again where that variance is. I notice that something's happening. I can see the gaps. And then I can immediately go in, either press a button and update the forecast or override my current forecast, right? So it's one thing to be able to identify, strategize, and now I can execute and monitor my business all within the EPM tool set. And this is really something that's extremely powerful and I think adds a lot of value. And we're going to continuously be able to provide the tools. Whether you're talking about, machine learning capabilities where, hey, I can see that I'm getting problems in store traffic, but I want to model out how I may react to that. What are the employment numbers in my market? What is my pricing opportunity in this market? And how they may be related to my volumes and my margin. This is going to be really powerful and very valuable opportunities to, understand what the financial impacts are and really manage to those impacts. So I'll stop here. And if there's any questions for Lori and I in the last 5 or 10 minutes, we would love to be able to answer those questions.
Hopefully the retail talent management part of the webinar was valuable for you guys. If you have any questions, feel please feel free to ask them now. We'll wait around for a little bit. If I can't answer them now, I'll be sure to follow up. One question came out, which I did answer already, but if you'd have access to the deck. I don't believe so, but the same link that you have will give you, should give you access going forward to the recording. And if there's a special request for the deck, I can check into it. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can give you 10 minutes back in your day. All right. Bree, I think there's another slide we wanted to. Yeah. Okay. So just a reminder that to register for Edward Roski's delivery of the State of Finance Transformation, it's going to be March 2nd at 2 p.m. Eastern. He always does a fantastic job in his presentations, and I highly recommend you guys register and attend. All right, I think that's it. Thank you very much. Please feel free to follow up with me if you have any other questions. Thanks.